Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Caniglio.
And I'm Marnie Stockman, and this is Lead It Like Lasso, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. We are the co authors of Lead It Like Lasso, a leadership book for life, your life.
And as you know by now, this podcast is an extension of many of the elements outlined in our book. We invite you to join us as we take a deep dive into each episode and explore the leadership principles as they play out in the series. And for today's episode, we're diving into a good one. Season 3, Episode 6, Sunflowers.
Oh, the Ted Lasso Facebook fans community loves sunflowers. This is one of the top talked about episodes there for sure.
Yeah, and not only them, I think we loved it as well. So, uh, for a little recap of the episode, this is really multiple journeys with one night in Amsterdam,
Yeah.
and it starts. Well, it starts with them losing. Another loss for the team. But Ted opens the door to no curfews, and the entire team and the coaching staff and the ownership spreads out across Amsterdam. Yeah, and what follows in one night is many journeys and a series of self discoveries.
Yeah. One of the fun ones, of course, is Rebecca meeting a mysterious Dutch stranger right after she falls into the canal. So that encounter, warm, unexpected, and possibly prophetic.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of warm, Jamie
Mm,
teaches
yes.
Roy how to ride a bike,
Oh.
and there's quite a lot of bonding that goes on after that.
Ted gets mentally high, but actually not physically, and goes on this interesting psychedelic journey through museums, triangles, barbecue sauce, and comes up with total football.
Yeah, the Colin storyline
Yes.
gets a lot deeper. He opens up to Trent, and he breaks our heart, reveals the ache of living two lives, which is hard to do.
Keely's pretty quiet in this episode, but you begin to see Roy processing her relationship with Jack, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, and the team, our favorite team, AFC Richmond, after a lot of chaos and a lot of indecision, they probably settle into one of the purest forms of joy, which is a pillow fight.
A pillow fight. And
Yeah.
then Higgins and Will have a surprisingly profound jazz night, complete with a quote to live by.
Yeah. And finally, the night ends with Ted's new idea you mentioned earlier, total football, and everybody reunites on the bus, renewed, and we get to hear some great music in this episode. Very
Yeah.
timely. Don't worry about a thing. So,
And they're
so
all probably tired. I bet some of that ride when they're not singing, they're napping. But yes, it was a long episode for all of us.
yeah, it sure was. So where do you want to start, Marty?
Well, I've got quite a few notes. It's like the top 10. But how about if we start with a bit about communication? So
Okay.
we know communication is a critical leadership. It's a critical life skill, not just leadership skill. And today I feel like it is very possible with all the memes and quote unquote brain rot, which is what they call all the nonsense on the internet. Um, if you don't understand what someone else is saying, that you can get context wrong. Case in point, Higgins was going to have a night on the town in the red light district,
Yeah.
right? And
We
it
all know what
happens
that
a few
means.
times. Yeah,
Not.
he tells Will's going to become a man in the red light district. Lots of possibilities. Uh, so I felt like communication was a theme there.
Yeah, I absolutely, and I'm gonna. There was one line that I believe Higgins said, right? With one pilgrim, that's a zealot, and but with two pilgrims, that is a pilgrimage. Which we talk about leadership and how often it can feel lonely.
Yes.
um, and so that line, obviously, it was very specific to the context of
Yeah.
the show,
Yeah.
and what starts out as kind of a rite of passage, um, really ends up turning into, I don't know, a really cool sacred connection between Will and Higgins, and I think that's that's representative of at least some of my experiences where I did feel lonely, mostly because of my own actions, where I felt like I needed to be lonely in a leadership position.
Yeah.
But it's amazing when you open the doors to people helping, and again, something that seems obvious, but I missed it, in my leadership 101 course way back in the early days. But how much easier it is to have companionship, and when you start opening up and being vulnerable. And I think the vulnerability is not necessarily what happened in this show. A little bit, it happened a little bit, but um, I just thought there was a hidden message in that. So that's
Oh,
my
I think
take.
that's a good one. The other part on this particular bit, with them mentioning the red light district quite a bit, is that Higgins clearly is understood for the authentic version of Higgins. He is
Yeah.
well branded within the organization because he talks about going to the red light district, and Rebecca and Keely look at each other as though to say, "You mean he's going to the red light district? The reason we think he's going?" And then they both say, "Nah." And then later he says to some other folks on the team, "We're going to the red light district." And they look at each other again, "Nah," because he's well branded and authentic, and they know Higgins. And I think that helps smooth over, if we go back to the communication piece, if you are always the authentic version of yourself, even if you make little mistakes along the way, being authentic helps smooth that over a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is a good segue to one of the another main. There are so many of them, but another
Yeah.
main uh, storyline of the show, which is the situation with Colin, where not intentionally, but Trent understands um, and confronts him about Colin being gay, right? And um, I think there's something that comes across in that storyline, that whether or not you're in that position, but you've been in similar positions in the past where uh, Colin talked about living two lives,
Yeah.
and the ache that goes along with that. And I think when we talk about authenticity, and I'm not saying by any stretch Colin wasn't authentic, right? But communicating your authenticity to everybody, so you don't have to be in a position to act one way with one subset of people and a second way with a second subset of people, um, is really important, because as we see play out perfectly in the show, the stress involved with having to be a different person with different constituents is real. It's
Oh, for
it's
sure.
it's anxiety producing. It's stressful, and from the standpoint of just general life, I know a ton of people in a very different position than Colin in the show, but kind of live that life where um, they in essence border themselves off with their friends versus their coworkers, their fellow students versus their family, and that's a really tough position to sustain, I think.
Oh, couldn't agree more. It makes me think of in the classroom that so many times I live in a small community, so my worlds are continually colliding. Right, the people I play volleyball with probably have a child that was in a class I taught, that type of thing. But when I was teaching, I can remember I was being observed, and I told a silly story. And when the observer left, the kids said, "Miss Stockman, like, you don't care if somebody's in here watching or not. You're still the same goofy version." And especially in a small town, it would be impossible to not be the same person, because you just bump into all kinds of different worlds in one place. But I think a lot of people do put a mask on at work or with groups of people, like you said, and that is hard to do. That is, you mentioned it, it's a level of stress that really wears on folks over time. I think as leadership, that is why we talk about icebreakers or team building being important, because it does help folks bond. I mean, pillow fights absolutely make for great television.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that's kind of hidden in that is, if and when people do find out things that they felt like they should have expected to know,
Yeah,
it's not helping with the trust factor. And we often talk about how trust is, if not the most important, one of the most important aspects to
yep,
building any team and being a leader. And when you suddenly find out, oh, I didn't know, Nick, that you had this hobby doing X, Y, or Z, or something to that effect. I mean, that's a very trivial example, I understand, but
they feel
it's
like they
something
didn't know
that,
you.
yeah, that's exactly right. You're
Yeah,
you're trying to build that trust, and you'll never, um, you never really open yourself up to the opportunity to find people that might be in a similar position
yeah,
as you. And I think it's really neat the way it played out with both Colin and Trent. Is you can see over the course of the episode, granted, but okay, we share some of the same experiences. You can see them then starting to trust each other more, and really open it up. And I think, um, you know that's important, is you lose out on that opportunity if you don't, if you if you hold back certain things that are very important to you, that impact your life on a day-to-day basis.
and in the course of that, we talked a bit about team building, and another element in this episode was how about the bond building between Jamie and Roy Kent as Jamie teaches Roy to ride a bike.
How about it, right?
Well, that was
The
one of the most entertaining bits across the whole series, was that bit.
without a doubt. And um, want to talk about, we talk about reverse mentoring, the
Yeah.
mentor becoming the mentee.
Yep.
I think what a great way to portray that these writers have done. And inside, you kind of, you get these hidden, oh my god, yeah, I didn't think about that too, when Roy was, when he finally apologizes, when he finally admits that his grandfather was the one who was supposed to teach him how to ride the bike, right, and he passed away. um, and he then says something to the effect of, okay, now I can go back to my normal, taking all my issues that I have out on, for no good reason, out on you, Jamie. And and it made me think, and I think I'm more guilty than I like on this, but God, that's so true, right? You have something bothering you that you're not opening up and discussing, to other people with, and then you go and you snap at, I snap at my wife or my child, or something to that effect, when it has absolutely nothing to
Nothing
do
to
with
do with them.
them,
Yeah.
right? But it's the stress, and we find out in the show. I mean, Roy confesses that, I think Keely might be seeing another girl, right? And that's really why, at least in this episode,
Yep.
he's taking out his anger and
Yeah, in
frustration
this
in
episode. Fair.
Jamie. So I thought, what a cool storyline, though, and
Yeah.
riding the bike when he's only going in circles and throwing the bike. This is brilliance,
Yeah.
absolute brilliance.
Always.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on that?
Not on that. Next up, I thought it was interesting when Ted said, "What do you do to Beard? What do you do when you're feeling stuck? What do you do to get out of your head or to get inspired?" Beard's answer is very different, right? He's going to have some mushroom tea. But as part of that, um, is the power of brainstorming. And we've talked about the power of brainstorming before, especially in Ted Lasso. Remember when they did all of the football plays? There have been multiple times, and never, bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. But this time, the soccer team's brainstorming, activities to do that evening, which in and of itself was sort of a team bonding event.
Yeah, yeah. I love the line. I think Beard says, "I've been waiting however many years, my whole life, for you
Yeah,
to ask me that question." Um, but yeah, it goes back to, we just got asked this question on the on a different podcast we were on the other day. What's your escape? What is what is it that disrupts your mental loops or something to that effect,
Yeah.
right? That triggers new ideas and new thoughts. Just the idea of brainstorming. Like you said, it's sometimes it's so hard when you're just constantly pushing for the answers instead of creating the space you know, to let them in.
Yeah.
And I think whether it was uh, this tea with the hallucinogenic that was really not
Really a
uh,
dud.
yeah, it was a dud. But whatever it was, it gave Ted the reason to just step away and think about something different. So
And where do you
my
get
question
your
for
answers?
you, what's that?
So where do you get your answers? I know
Oh, I
one
was
of
just
them.
about to ask you that
Finally,
same
I beat you
question.
to a question.
Yeah,
That is a win for me, folks listening.
yeah,
We're in season 3, and I finally got a question.
yeah. It is amazing to me that almost all of my best thoughts come when I'm taking a shower. And I've read the memes online and people talk
Yeah.
about it, and you talk about walking and stuff like that. But for some reason, that is the one place in this world where I guess I stop pushing for answers, and then all of a sudden things just start rushing into my head, which
Isn't
is
that
kind of
funny how that
crazy.
happens?
How about you?
Uh, so yeah, I walk a lot, right? I walk and knit and just let my mind wander. It was interesting in college in thinking about really pushing through. I can remember a few times where I was really trying to get as a math major. I was really trying to get a complex math concept down, and I just couldn't do it. But I'm a morning. I'm a early riser, not a night owl. And I can
Mhm.
remember working on a problem from 7 to 10 p.m. And I just said, I'm going to go to bed. And then in the morning, I wake up and solution, right? Like the brain just needed that extra processing time. The other place that I think lets my brain go, it's one of the reasons I really like sports. And I think it helps in a couple of ways that it actually is a place where I can shut off the rest of my brain. On Friday nights, I play volleyball with my kids, and my daughter's a teacher. And Friday was a rough day, and she was struggling up until 6 p.m. And then when we started playing volleyball, she took a game to get into it. But then after the second game, I said, "Is the day going better?" And she'd kind of gotten herself out of it. So I do think it can help free up the brain and take some of the stress off when you can get yourself out of it.
Without a doubt, and I think that's why a lot of people turn to working out or exercise, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a
I
similar
wish
concept.
running worked for me, but I really just don't enjoy that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah, my mind while I'm running is constantly looking for the answer of how do I stop.
Oh, yes.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing is
that's
chasing me. I'm doing this on my own. This is ridiculous.
exactly.
Roy would, I don't know, could Roy motivate you if he was chasing you like he did
Yeah,
Jamie?
maybe for about a minute, but as
Yeah.
as we found out during this episode, that I think that's about all he can keep up. So you mentioned volleyball, and I just happen to know that you played volleyball collegiately.
Yeah.
Um, Did you ever get a message from the coach that said no curfew tonight? Those three magic words.
No, but I don't I wouldn't have known if we did. I was not
Yeah.
I was not one to go out anyway, and I don't ever remember the team going out. It was typically things at hotels, where we would just go to somebody's room. And I've always liked my sleep, so I wouldn't even have necessarily participated then. So no, there was certainly no pillow fights or
Okay.
or run about town.
Well, let me bring it more up your speed then,
Yeah.
more up your alley in terms of have you ever been in is there ever been a time as you're leading a class, leading a team, where you felt like it was the right time to loosen control a little bit as a leader to kind of bring joy and chaos and more of a renewal of spirit or anything like that?
Yeah, now that brings a little more. Yeah, I can relate to that one a bit more. Some things come to mind in terms of teaching in having a class where, okay, like something big is going on, it's typically in our town a snowstorm is happening, and they're not going to be able to get past it because they're so enthusiastic about it. So we spend a minute doing something silly about that. Okay, you've heard the old wives' tales about putting a spoon out or doing a snow dance. So I've absolutely, to high schoolers. All right, everybody stand up. We're going to do a snow dance for a minute, and then we're going to sit down and get this done just to shake it up. So, in that regard, sometimes loosening control for sure gets you where it needs to be.
So you have, in that scenario, you have actually dictated more control to control them, to loosen control a little bit to get them to
For
free
those
up.
playing along at home, he's calling me out on being a control freak again.
No, no,
Because I
no.
am, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think about, um, there's like 10 years ago, the whole notion of, and the phrases, you'll hit it, and I can't believe the phrases not in my head right now. But the engineering shops, you know, setting aside some team where they can go create solutions, right? Some code fest of
Yep.
some sort.
Hackathon.
Um, Say again.
Hackathons.
Hackathon. Thank you. Oh, my goodness, that is the word I was thinking about. Yes. Um, but I mean that in essence would have been frowned upon years and years, and I mean not even years and years ago, 10 years ago. But then it started to come into play where, okay, you just go do what you're going to do. Have some fun. You know, think of some creative solutions to some things, and the results have been, you read stories about the results, how new
Yeah.
products, new services, new offerings were based off of something that just gave freedom to engineers and developers to go build something. And I think that's a perfect use case, an example of giving people more freedom, because you never know what might come out of it once people kind of clear the shackles of the day-to-day grind and start creating something. And I think that's really important to remember. Um, if whatever, it doesn't have to be engineering related. It could be any industry, to give people some time and some thought to be creative, because the value that they can add um, is a lot, presumably because you hired them on your team, right?
It's interesting because it makes me think sometimes putting a really funny restriction on something can free up people's brains, right? Come up with 100 ways to use a brick, none of which
Yeah,
can be build a wall in a house, gets you really thinking. And the reverse is, if money and the laws of physics were of no option, we're not of concerned, what would you do to build a team? And I remember, I know I've talked to you about the time I had to build a 12-star customer success program. They said, you've heard of 5-star programs.
yep,
We want you to design a 12-star. Nothing is off the table. And that was really fun to open up the ideas of, yeah, if you are a leader of a team, that is a fun way to get some big ideas out on the table. And what was interesting is they came back and said, well, are these some of these things we could do? Because that was, I don't know how you came up with that ridiculousness, but there's a part of that that's kind of some magic.
yeah. It always reminds me of the time that we had the opportunity to sit in front of military leaders where they're
Oh,
doing design thinking, and the challenge was, how do we get this cat out of the tree? And of course,
the first
you know,
30 answers.
yes, yeah, let's shoot it
Shoot the
down.
cat.
Yeah, it's it's something. Um, so, what was your definition of gazelic? I can't even say
Oh,
that.
Hazilla. Has Gazelic, is that
Gazelic.
how it is? I feel like I just have to build up a cough and then say some letters. Um, I felt like it was a state of almost like Zen flow, where it was just a really comfortable state of happy peace. What was yours?
Uh, yeah, I thought familiar. I think they used the
Yeah,
words
I said
cozy,
comfortable.
and then
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
said your heart. And I thought, given the context of the interaction between Rebecca and our Dutch man, um, who I don't know if we ever know the name of. Uh,
We do not, because she
you know,
says,
uh,
he
I
says,
know in this episode we don't,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Um, but yeah, the whole, you know, there's there's the microcosm of Rebecca and the guy, and and the whole notion of the flow, like you said, that they got into, and that was a very similar flow to other storylines within, Ted himself
Ted
got
getting into
into
the flow.
flow
Yeah.
of
Total
thinking
football.
about total football,
Yeah.
and then uh, all the other storylines as well with Jamie and Roy and Ted and Colin and Trent. But the entire show had this great
The
flow
villa.
to it, um, which I thought was really cool, and I think good for Rebecca in being vulnerable. Right? That's not normal Rebecca
No, yeah.
from what we have understood to this point, and uh, she only got there because she agreed to be vulnerable with
Yeah.
with the guy. So
Yeah, but it took her falling off a bridge and losing her phone to get there.
yes, yeah, it sure did. So, what other things did you have? Any other uh, items in the?
I don't think I did. I think the rest of it was really about the flow piece, and interesting that Ted, thought he had to get into a different mindset. And I'm just now thinking this. So he thought he needed to get into a different place. So he drank what he thought was spiked tea. And then where did he go? To an American pub where there was a dartboard and barbecue sauce and Arthur Bryant's barbecue sauce, which he's very familiar with. And he's watching things he knows. He's familiar with the basketball game that they're playing on television. And he actually kind of came home to his own thoughts and was able to put what he already knew into the concept of coaching soccer slash football, and comes up with total football. And I do think that that's an important leadership thing to think about, the notion of taking something from another part of your life and bringing it to a different scenario at work can really expand. I think that's how innovation can happen. Now Ted's innovation has already happened, so he didn't create a new a totally new football strategy, but I do think that's how innovation happens.
Yeah, yeah, I don't argue with that, and I will counter Beard's contention that the tea wasn't spiked from the
Maybe just not for him.
simple standpoint that Ted not only hallucinated seeing Nate, he also hallucinated seeing this cartoon character, right? I forget the exact name of the character, but that kind of introduced him to, reminded him of all the concepts. But again, important that Bulls game, it kind of tied everything together, right? What was he reminded of? He was reminded of watching with his dad, and we know that is, his relationship with his dad is a big part of the panic attacks that
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's actually having, and it gets him back to, you saw the journal pages when they were flipping through at the end, right? It's triangles, angles, try angels, and he really did come full circle, and when you're meant to try, right? It's that line in the show is really powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when what was it
just
when you
amazing.
I wrote it down. When you know you're doing what you meant to do,
Yeah,
you have to try.
that's the line. Thank you
Yeah.
for correcting me. Yes. So yeah, all all good stuff. Um, did we hit everything from your perspective?
Yeah, we had the big, I mean, that was such a powerful episode, so many things, but those were the highlights I thought in terms of leadership. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Can't wait for the next episode. So
Oh yeah.
I think that means it's time to blow the whistle.
Whistle
Game's
whistle.
over. but the leadership lessons keep on playing.
Yeah, they do. As a reminder, you can find us here, there, and everywhere at Lead It Like Lasso, and of course, leaditlikelasso.com. Or we'd love for you to check out our snarky little sidekick of a newsletter at workinprogress.ai. And don't forget to like, comment, and share, subscribe. Do all the
Absolutely.
things.
So until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and as always, keep leading it like Lasso.